A man who stands his ground knows when something isn't right. That gut feeling hit me like a sledgehammer when my wife started acting strange about her friend's small gathering. I've always faced challenges head-on, building skyscrapers, providing for my family, fighting for what matters. But nothing prepared me for what I discovered when I decided to arrive at that party early. Some betrayals cut deeper than others, and some choices can never be undone. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm 37 years old, and I work as a structural engineer for a construction company in Portland. 7 years ago, I met Emily Wilson at a company event. She was working in marketing for a client firm. The moment I saw her across the room, something just clicked. She had this way of lighting up the whole place with her smile, and I found myself drawn to her like a moth to flame. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Within 6 months, we were practically inseparable. Emily was smart, ambitious, and had this contagious enthusiasm for life that pulled me out of my workaholic shell. After dating for 3 years, I popped the question during a weekend trip to the Oregon coast. I still remember how her eyes welled up when I got down on one knee with the waves crashing behind us. Yes, 1,000 times yes, she squealed, jumping into my arms. Emily's parents, William and Barbara Wilson, weren't exactly thrilled. They made no secret that they thought their daughter was settling for a blue-collar guy who couldn't provide the lifestyle they envisioned for her. William, a retired banking executive, barely spoke 10 words to me during our first dinner together. "So you build things," he'd said, somehow making it sound like I dug ditches for a living. My parents, on the other hand, embraced Emily immediately. My mom, Diana, treated her like the daughter she never had, and my dad, Robert, always lit up whenever Emily walked into the room. "You hit the jackpot, son," Dad whispered to me at our engagement party. "Don't mess this up." Despite the tension with her parents, we went ahead with a modest wedding. Emily looked breathtaking walking down the aisle, and I couldn't believe my luck. As we exchanged vows, I truly believed we'd grow old together, facing whatever life threw our way as a team. The first 2 years of marriage were everything I'd hoped for. We bought a small house in the suburbs, spent weekends hiking or fixing up our home, and talked excitedly about starting a family. I put in extra hours at work, earning a promotion to project manager. Emily thrived in her marketing career, quickly climbing the corporate ladder. We had our whole lives ahead of us, or so I thought. Looking back, I can pinpoint exactly when things started to change between Emily and me. It was around our 3rd anniversary. I'd been handed a major highway renovation project, which meant longer hours and more responsibility. The promotion came with a substantial pay raise, enough that we could finally start thinking about buying a bigger house in a better school district. I was working my tail off, sometimes pulling 14-hour days to prove myself. I'd come home exhausted but proud, knowing I was building something meaningful, not just the structures themselves, but a future for us. Emily seemed to understand at first. She'd have dinner waiting, ask about my day, and share stories from her marketing job. "Your father called," she mentioned one night as we cleared the dinner dishes. "He wants us to come over this weekend for a barbecue." "That sounds great," I said, genuinely looking forward to it. My parents' place was always a refuge from the stress of work. Emily's expression tightened, a small frown forming between her brows. "Do we have to? We've seen your parents 3 times this month already." That was the first sign. Small, almost imperceptible, but definitely there. "I thought you liked spending time with them," I replied, confused by her sudden change in attitude. "I do, but..." She sighed, setting down a plate with a little too much force. "We never do anything exciting anymore, Michael. It's all work and family visits. Don't you ever want to just live a little?" The complaint caught me off guard. This wasn't the Emily I knew, the one who had loved our quiet evenings and family gatherings. I tried to brush it off as stress from her job, but similar comments began popping up more frequently. Around the same time, her parents started visiting more often. Barbara Wilson would sweep into our house like she owned the place, casting critical glances at our modest furniture and my building plans spread across the dining table. "Emily tells me you're always working," Barbara said during one particularly uncomfortable dinner. "A young couple should be enjoying life, not slave away for some corporation." I bit my tongue, but Emily nodded in agreement. "That's what I've been saying, Mom." It felt like I was suddenly outnumbered in my own home. William would chime in with helpful investment advice, implying that my career choices weren't going to provide the lifestyle their daughter deserved. You know, our friend's son-in-law just bought them a vacation home in the Hamptons, William mentioned casually. That's the kind of thing a successful man does for his family. The barbs were subtle but constant, and instead of defending me, Emily seemed to be internalizing her parents' disappointment. She started comparing our life to her college friends, many of whom had married into money or were living what she called more adventurous lifestyles. Jessica and her husband are going to Europe for a month, she'd say, scrolling through social media. When was the last time we went anywhere exciting? I tried explaining that we were building something sustainable, something real, but the seed of discontent had been planted, and I was about to learn just how deep those roots would grow. The news of Emily's pregnancy hit like a thunderbolt on a clear day. I remember where I was standing, in our kitchen, a half-drunk cup of coffee in my hand, when she walked in holding the pregnancy test. "Michael," she whispered, her eyes wide. "We're going to have a baby." In that moment, everything changed. All the tensions, the subtle criticisms, the growing distance between us vanished. I swept her into my arms, spinning her around until she laughingly begged me to stop. "You'll make me sick," she giggled. I set her down gently, suddenly aware of the precious cargo she carried. "I'm going to be a dad," I said, the reality sinking in. "We're going to be parents." The next 7 months were a whirlwind of preparation. I threw myself into getting ready for our child with the same intensity one brought to my engineering projects. Weekends were spent converting our spare bedroom into a nursery, measuring, cutting, and painting until every detail was perfect. When Emily expressed concern about the safety of the crib I'd bought, I designed and built one myself, triple-checking every joint and corner. "You're going to be an amazing father," Emily said one night, watching me finish sanding the crib rails. Her pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness plagued her well into the second trimester, and by the third, her blood pressure had become a concern. I took time off work to drive her to every doctor's appointment, sat through every class on breathing techniques, and memorized the hospital route with alternate options in case of traffic. When complications arose in her 7th month, the doctor ordered bed rest. I rearranged my entire work schedule, set up a home office in our bedroom, and took over the cooking, cleaning, and shopping. Barbara Wilson offered to help, but her help consisted mainly of criticizing my efforts and reminding Emily how her father had hired full-time staff when she was pregnant with Emily. "Michael doesn't need help," Emily said firmly, surprising both her mother and me. "He's doing everything perfectly." That night, after Barbara left, Emily reached for my hand across the dinner tray I'd prepared. "Thank you," she said simply. "I don't think I could do this without you." The night Jacob was born was the most terrifying and exhilarating of my life. 16 hours of labor, Emily squeezing my hand so hard I thought my fingers might break. I never left her side, not even when the nurses suggested I take a break. "I'm not going anywhere," I told them firmly, wiping sweat from Emily's forehead. When they placed our son in my arms for the first time, this tiny human with my nose and Emily's eyes, I made a silent vow that I would do anything, to protect my family. For a while, it seemed like Jacob's birth had cemented us together, stronger than before. I was naive enough to believe that we'd turn a corner, that we were united in purpose again. I couldn't have been more wrong. Life with a newborn was nothing like the parenting books described. Jacob was colicky, screaming through the night for weeks on end. I'd pace the hallway with him at 3 a.m., swaying and humming, while Emily caught a few precious hours of sleep. Then I'd shower, chug coffee, and head to work, functioning on autopilot through important meetings. "You look like hell, Thompson," my boss commented after one particularly rough night. Instead of making excuses, I straightened my shoulders. "My son needs me right now," I replied. "But the Wellington project is still on schedule." At 6 months, Jacob finally started sleeping through the night. I thought things would get easier, that Emily and I could reconnect. But something had shifted in our dynamic. While I'd fallen head over heels for fatherhood, cherishing every milestone, videoing first smiles and crawling attempts, Emily seemed to be pulling away. "Don't you ever miss our old life?" she asked one Saturday morning as I was making pancakes, Jacob gurgling happily in his high chair. "What's to miss?" I answered, flipping a pancake into a perfect circle. "We've got everything right here." She didn't respond, but I caught her scrolling through her Instagram feed, lingering on photos of friends at clubs and resorts. My parents became our lifeline. They'd take Jacob one Saturday a month so Emily and I could have date night, though these increasingly became Emily picking at her food while checking her phone. My mom would send over homemade meals, and my dad built Jacob a custom playground in our backyard. "Your parents are always here," Emily complained after they'd left one Sunday. "I can't breathe without them checking up on us." "They're just helping," I defended, stung by her ingratitude. The real trouble started when I came home early one Thursday, hoping to surprise Emily with takeout from her favorite restaurant. Jacob's crying hit me as soon as I opened the door. I found him red-faced in his crib, diapers soaked, while Emily was nowhere in sight. Panic seized me as I scooped him up, changing and soothing him with practiced movements. I called Emily's phone repeatedly, each unanswered ring increasing my alarm. Finally, the front door opened. Barbara Wilson stepped in, her expression a mixture of surprise and disapproval. "What are you doing home?" she demanded, as though I were the intruder. "Where's Emily?" I countered, Jacob now calm against my shoulder. "She needed a break," Barbara sniffed. "Every mother deserves some time away from this." She gestured vaguely at Jacob and me, as if we were some unpleasant chore rather than Emily's family. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice steady for Jacob's sake. "You left my son alone, crying." "I just stepped out for a moment to get the mail," she lied smoothly. "Emily will be back later. She's having coffee with friends." I didn't believe her for a second, but arguing with Barbara was pointless. Instead, I thanked her for coming by, making it clear her services were no longer needed, and settled in with Jacob for the long wait ahead. Emily stumbled through the door at nearly midnight, her hair disheveled and her breath heavy with alcohol. I sat in the living room, Jacob finally asleep after hours of crying for his mother. "You're still up?" she giggled, fumbling with her purse. I set down the parenting book I'd been reading and stood. "Where have you been, Emily?" "Your mother left hours ago." Jacob was alone. Her smile faded. "Mom was supposed to stay until I got back." "She didn't," I said flatly. I found our son crying, soaked through his diaper, with no one watching him. Emily's face crumpled, tears filling her eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't know she'd leave. I just needed a break. You don't understand how hard this is." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I understand perfectly. I'm here every night, Emily. Every weekend. I work all day, then come home and take care of Jacob while you're taking breaks. What I don't understand is how you could leave our child with someone who would abandon him." "Mom wouldn't." "She did. I cut her off. And we're lucky nothing worse happened." Emily collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. As much as I wanted to comfort her, as much as it killed me to see her cry, I knew this moment required strength, not sympathy. "This can't happen again," I said firmly. "If you need a break, we'll figure it out together. But your mother isn't a reliable caretaker, and you can't just disappear without making sure Jacob is safe." Through her tears, Emily nodded. "I know. I've been a terrible mother." "No, you haven't," I softened, sitting beside her but not touching her. "You're struggling, and that's okay. But we need to fix this together." The next day, I called a family meeting. My parents, Robert and Diana, came prepared to help however they could. Emily sat tense and red-eyed as I laid out a plan. "Emily needs more support than I can provide alone," I explained. "I'm going to adjust my work schedule to be home 3 afternoons a week. Mom, can you watch Jacob on Tuesdays? Dad, Thursdays." They agreed immediately. I turned to Emily. "And we need to find you someone to talk to, a professional who can help with postpartum depression." Emily looked startled. "I don't have depression." "You might," I said gently, "and there's no shame in getting help." For a moment, I thought she'd argue, but instead she reached for my hand. "Okay, I'll try." Over the following weeks, our new system took shape. I sacrificed a significant project at work to be home more, knowing my career might suffer. My parents stepped up reliably, never complaining about the early mornings or diaper disasters. Emily started seeing a therapist, and slowly, I noticed improvements. She smiled more, engaged with Jacob, even suggested family outings to the park. One evening, as we put Jacob to bed together, Emily whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I kissed her forehead. That was never an option. For a brief, shining moment, I believed we'd weathered the storm, that our marriage had emerged stronger from the trial. I should have known better than to let my guard down. Thanksgiving arrived with a crisp chill and golden leaves carpeting our yard. Jacob was nearly 18 months old, toddling everywhere with determined curiosity that kept us constantly on our toes. Emily had improved dramatically with therapy, medication, and a part-time return to work 3 days a week. We still had challenges, but I felt cautiously optimistic about our future. Then came the phone call that upended our fragile peace. "Mom and Dad want us to come for Thanksgiving," Emily announced one evening, her voice carefully neutral. My jaw tightened. Since the incident with Jacob, I'd limited contact with Barbara and William Wilson. They made a half-hearted apology, but I couldn't forget or fully forgive Barbara's negligence. "We already promised my parents we'd go there," I reminded her. My mother had been planning the menu for weeks, even buying a special high chair for Jacob. "Can't we do both?" Emily pressed. "Your parents in the afternoon, mine for dinner?" I shook my head. "Jacob needs a schedule, Em. 2 Thanksgiving meals with all that travel in between would be exhausting for him. So, it has to be your family." Her voice took on a familiar edge. "My family has been there for us. For Jacob, consistently," I stated firmly. "Your parents haven't earned that privilege." The argument escalated quickly. Emily accused me of controlling her, of trying to separate her from her family. I reminded her of Barbara's negligence, of the constant criticism I endured from her parents. Finally, Emily threw up her hands. "Fine, I'll go to my parents alone, and you can take Jacob to yours." I stared at her, stunned by the suggestion. "You choose Thanksgiving with your parents over your husband and child?" She didn't answer directly, but her silence was answer enough. "That's not happening," I said firmly. "We're a family. We spend holidays together." The next morning, I called my parents and explained the situation. Without hesitation, they offered the perfect solution. "Invite them here," my father suggested. "We'll host everyone." It was the last thing I wanted, but for Emily's sake, for our family's sake, I extended the invitation to the Wilsons. To my surprise, they accepted, though Barbara made it clear she considered it a concession. Thanksgiving Day arrived with snow flurries and tense smiles. My mother had outdone herself, preparing traditional dishes alongside William Wilson's favorite bourbon pecan pie and Barbara's preferred cranberry relish. My father entertained Jacob while I carved the turkey, determined to make the day work. For a while, it seemed possible. William grudgingly complimented my promotion at work. Barbara admired Jacob's vocabulary. Our family shared a meal without open hostility, a minor miracle. Then Barbara mentioned a friend's daughter who had recently returned from a European vacation with her husband. "They're living life to the fullest," she said, glancing pointedly at Emily. "No chains holding them back." My mother stiffened beside me, but I placed a calming hand on her arm. This was my battle. Some people measure fulfillment differently. I replied evenly. Personally, I find more meaning in building a stable home for my son than in collecting passport stamps. The table fell silent. Emily looked torn between embarrassment and agreement. It wasn't the peaceful Thanksgiving I'd hoped for, but I'd stood my ground without creating a scene. For now, that would have to be enough. 6 months after our 10th Thanksgiving, Emily's childhood friend Megan announced a birthday celebration at her newly purchased suburban home. Emily had been doing better, more engaged with Jacob, more present in our marriage, but I still felt uneasy when she mentioned the party. "It's on Saturday night," she said, scrolling through the invitation on her phone. "I haven't seen Megan in ages. What kind of party is it?" I asked, trying to sound casual while bathing Jacob. "Just drinks, appetizers, catching up." She hesitated. "It might run late." I dried Jacob off, wrapping him in his dinosaur towel. "Define late. Midnight? Maybe later." Emily bit her lip. "I was hoping you wouldn't mind." The old tensions resurfaced. Before Jacob, I wouldn't have thought twice about Emily attending a friend's birthday. Now, every late night out carried the weight of past mistakes. "I can pick you up." I offered a compromise. "That way you can have a few drinks if you want." Relief washed over her face. "That would be perfect." I told Megan I'd help set up, so I'll go around 7. "Could you pick me up at 11? I agreed, though something about the arrangement still gnawed at me. Saturday arrived, and Emily spent hours getting ready. A new dress, careful makeup, perfume I hadn't seen her wear in months. She looked beautiful, but I couldn't shake my discomfort. "You look amazing," I said sincerely, kissing her goodbye. After putting Jacob to bed, I tried to distract myself with a basketball game on TV. The clock seemed to move slower than usual. By 9, my anxiety had built to the point where focusing on anything was impossible. I decided to surprise her by coming early to the party. The sight that greeted me left me speechless. Pulling up to Megan's address, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The house was vibrating with music, cars lined the street, and people spilled onto the front lawn with drinks in hand. This wasn't a quiet gathering of old friends. It was a full-blown house party. I parked and made my way inside, nodding awkwardly at strangers while scanning the crowd for Emily. The living room was packed with dancing bodies. The kitchen had become an impromptu bar, but no sign of my wife. "Have you seen Emily?" I asked Megan, finally spotting her by the stairs. She gave me a confused look. "Emily? I think she went out back with some guy. Brad or Brandon. Works at her old company." My heart hammered against my ribs as I pushed through the crowd toward the backyard. The patio was illuminated by string lights, revealing clusters of people engaged in conversation. And there, in the far corner, stood Emily with a tall, dark-haired man, their bodies close, her hand resting on his arm as she laughed at something he'd said. I froze, watching them. She looked happier, more animated than I'd seen her in months. The man leaned closer, saying something in her ear that made her throw her head back in laughter. Then I noticed her bare hand. Her wedding ring was gone. I moved through the crowd as if in a dream, everything around me blurring except for Emily and the man beside her. Some rational part of my brain noted that they weren't kissing, weren't even embracing, just standing too close, her hand occasionally touching his arm, her smile too bright, too eager. It wasn't what she was doing, it was what she was pretending to be. Available. Unattached. Free. "Emily," I said, my voice cutting through their conversation. She startled, her eyes widening with shock. "Michael, what are you doing here? It's not 11 yet." "Clearly," I replied evenly. "I decided to come early." The man beside her shifted uncomfortably. "I should let you two talk." "No," I said, my gaze still fixed on Emily. "I think you should stay. I'd like to know who you are and how you know my wife." Emily's face flushed. "Michael, this is Brandon Miller. He works in the marketing department at my old company." "Brandon, this is my husband." Brandon extended his hand, which I reluctantly shook. "Nice to meet you. Emily was just telling me about your construction projects." "Was she?" I asked. "Did she also tell you she's married? Because I notice her wedding ring is missing." Emily's hand flew to her bare finger. I took it off to apply lotion and forgot to put it back on. Brandon glanced between us. "Listen, I didn't mean to cause any trouble. Emily mentioned she was here with friends. I had no idea she was married." The confirmation hit like a punch to the gut. I turned to Emily, keeping my voice controlled despite the storm raging inside. "We need to talk. Now." Brandon took the opportunity to escape, muttering an awkward goodbye. I led Emily to a quieter corner of the yard. "What are you doing, Emily?" I asked, struggling to maintain my composure. "Pretending to be single at a party? Flirting with some guy from your old job?" "I wasn't flirting," she protested weakly. "We were just talking. Without your wedding ring. Telling him you're here, with friends, instead of mentioning your husband and child." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "I just wanted to feel like me again for one night. Not someone's wife. Not someone's mother. Just Emily." "That person doesn't exist anymore," I said quietly. "The moment you said, 'I do,' the moment Jacob was born, that changed everything. For both of us. It's easier for you," she whispered. "Easier." I laughed humorlessly. I gave up the Wellington project, the biggest opportunity of my career, to be home more. I haven't gone out with friends in months. I've rebuilt our entire life to make things work. Emily wiped at her tears. "I know. I'm sorry." "Sorry isn't enough this time," I said, making a decision. "I'm taking you home. Now. And tomorrow, we're having a real conversation about whether this marriage can be saved." The drive home from Megan's party was silent and suffocating. Emily stared out the passenger window, occasionally wiping tears from her cheeks. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, focusing on the road to keep my emotions in check. At home, I paid the babysitter while Emily disappeared upstairs. I checked on Jacob, peacefully asleep in his crib, blissfully unaware that his family was crumbling around him. Looking at his innocent face, I made a promise to him and to myself, whatever happened next, I would be the father he deserved. The next morning, I took Jacob to my parents' house early. They asked no questions when they saw my face, simply embraced me and promised to keep him for as long as needed. "You're a good man, Michael," my father said quietly. "Remember that, no matter what." When I returned, Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, eyes red and swollen. She'd made coffee but hadn't touched her cup. "We need to talk about last night," I said, sitting across from her. "I know what you're thinking," she began, "but nothing happened with Brandon." "This time," I added. "Nothing happened this time." She flinched. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," I replied evenly, "is pretending to be single when you have a husband and child waiting at home. It's disrespectful to me and to our marriage. I just wanted one night to feel young and carefree again," she whispered. I leaned forward. "Emily, I need you to understand something. I don't expect you to be happy every minute of every day. Parenthood is hard. Marriage is hard. But what I do expect is honesty. I've been unhappy for a long time," she admitted, her voice barely audible. The words stung, but they weren't surprising. "I know, and I've been trying to fix things. But I can't do it alone." We talked for hours, peeling back layers of resentment and disappointment. Emily confessed feeling trapped by motherhood, overshadowed by my close relationship with Jacob. I acknowledged working too much, maybe taking her for granted. "What do we do now?" she finally asked. I took a deep breath. "I think we need some time apart. I'll stay with my parents for a while." "You're leaving me?" Her voice cracked. "No," I said firmly. "I'm giving us both space to figure out what we really want. Whether this marriage is worth saving." As I packed a bag, watching Emily curl into herself on our bed, I wondered if there was anything left to salvage from the wreckage of our promises. 6 months after moving out, I sat across from Emily in a neutral territory, a quiet coffee shop halfway between my apartment and our old house. Jacob played with blocks in the children's corner, occasionally glancing up to ensure we were still watching. The separation had been difficult but necessary. I'd filed for joint custody immediately, ensuring I remained a constant in Jacob's life. Emily hadn't contested it, acknowledging that despite our problems, I was a good father. "How's the new project going?" Emily asked, stirring her latte. "Ahead of schedule," I replied. "The client's happy. Small talk. Safe territory. We'd gotten good at this dance over the months of co-parenting meetings and custody exchanges." Emily set down her spoon. "I've been seeing someone," she said softly. "A therapist, Dr. Winters. She's helping me understand some things about myself." I nodded. "That's good. She thinks I was trying to run from responsibilities instead of learning to balance them. That I blamed motherhood and marriage for feelings that were really about me." It was the most insight Emily had shown in years. I felt a surprising twinge of pride for her growth. "I've been doing some thinking too," I admitted, "about how I could have been more attentive to what you were going through." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "Do you think we made a mistake, getting married so young?" I considered the question carefully. "No, but we made plenty of mistakes after that. Can those mistakes be fixed?" she whispered. That was the question, wasn't it? Despite everything, a part of me still loved the woman sitting across from me, the mother of my child, the girl who had once made me believe in forever. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But for Jacob's sake, I'm willing to try." We agreed to start with family counseling. Not reconciliation, not yet, but opening a door that had seemed permanently closed. As I watched Emily help Jacob with his jacket later, I realized something important. Trust, once broken, might never be fully restored. But forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about creating the possibility of a future. I didn't know if Emily and I would find our way back to each other, but I knew that whatever happened, I had become stronger through the breaking. I had discovered my worth, my boundaries, and the kind of father and man I wanted to be. Some promises may be broken, but others, the ones we make to ourselves, can remain unshakable through any storm.